to Movie Review Mom. Today, my special guest is the film fanatic, Dallin Curtins.
Hi, y'all.
Ooh. I thought Dallin would be perfect to help me today because we are going to do a movie review of Bumblebee. Yay! All right, so now we haven't talked before, so I don't know if you liked this movie or not, but on the count of 3, both of us are going to say the grade that we gave the movie. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
B+.
Oh, good. Hey, that's pretty close. I was going to say B+, but I thought because it's Bumblebee, I should give it a B, right?
Yeah, and then again, that's the perfect rating to give a movie like this, right?
Well, so tell me, why did you give Bumblebee a B+? What did you love about it?
I have a hard time finding things that I didn't love about it necessarily.
Oh, that's
but
good.
I went with B+ because, you know, there were a few things wrong with it, but on the whole, I really liked this movie. And the huge thing is that I'm not a Transformers fan, especially of the films. I mean, I liked the first film okay, but the sequels that followed were horrible, terrible. So I wasn't too excited. I was a little bit excited because I saw the trailers for this movie, and I thought it looked different from what was done before in previous films with the design, the filmmaking, and all that. So I went in and I absolutely liked it. It fixes everything that I didn't like about the previous films. It incorporates stuff that should be in a film, like competent story, good characters, and, you know, it combines the things that Michael Bay did right in the first few films with at least the sound editing, design, the visual effects, and it combines it together with a story that I really got invested in, but with characters that I actually, you know, cared for. I didn't hate these characters, both human and Autobot, or robot side, the Transformer side. But yeah, that's why I gave it a B+.
Oh, that's good. I should back up and say the movie is PG-13 and at only 114 minutes. This movie is the shortest in the Transformers franchise. All of the other ones were well over 2 hours long. And you just nailed it when you said that it corrected a lot of the problems or the complaints that fans had in the earlier movies. And I totally agree. One of my biggest complaints, and I'm a fan, I like the Transformers movies or the franchise as a whole, but my biggest complaint is that it's just all this jumbled up metal and fast action moving, and you're like, wait, I gotta sit in the very last row to even see what the heck is going on, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so we have a new director. Now, Michael Bay did not direct this, but he did produce it. So he still was on the crew, I guess you could say. But the new director, Travis Knight, really slows things down and kind of gives us a softer, gentler Autobot experience. There's characters with heart. Not that the other ones didn't have characters with heart, but they were highly sexualized characters. You know, the really cute vixen women, the girls that were the characters in the movie. This is a girl who's close to your age, isn't she?
Yeah, I believe she was 17, right, in the movie?
Yeah,
so I'm 16,
she
so
turns
yeah,
18.
older.
Yeah, she has her 18th birthday, the day that she gets Bumblebee, or she doesn't realize it's Bumblebee, but anyway, yeah, so she's played by Haley Steinfeld, who's amazing. She's a fantastic actress. I first fell in love with her when I saw her in True Grit, where I was so impressed with her depth and her ability for such a young girl. And in this movie, she's playing a high school girl very convincingly, although she just formerly did Pitch Perfect as a college student. So she's right at that sweet spot where she can kind of go either way. She did the Edge of 17 movie as well. And she plays a girl who's kind of a misfit both at school and at home, and is trying to kind of find her way. And of course she finds Bumblebee, who's also a misfit, who's an outsider, who doesn't belong. And so the two of them form this very sweet, tender friendship, don't they?
Yeah, it's very heartwarming in a way, and heartwarming isn't usually a word I'd use to describe Transformers movies. They're
Right.
very, I put that in air quotes, sophisticated, even though much of the humor in the past films have been childish. But this one actually has characters that I really enjoy because they have scenes where it's not action. They're just sitting in the garage. They're chatting with one another about their past. And, you know, of course, Bumblebee can't speak, right? So they're trying to figure out a way to communicate. And watching that is all great stuff because it's not action sequence over action sequence. It's taking time to slow things down and to get to know these two characters as they relate to one another. And I think that's the best part of the movie.
Yeah, I agree. And you mentioned Bumblebee speaking. At the very beginning of the movie, you actually hear his real voice. And then you quickly learn why we don't hear his voice or why he doesn't have a voice in all of the subsequent movies. This is really kind of it's a prequel, but it's also kind of a spin-off on the original Transformers movies. So I really liked that we got a little bit of information that we never had in all of the other Transformer movies, specifically about him. His eyes are softer. His faceplate is different. I loved his cute little horns. They were so just adorable, right?
Yeah. And they really played up the transforming part where he wouldn't be just all robot and all car. He transformed like a Segway kind of thing, I think, in the middle of the movie. And they really play with the fact that he can turn into anything. And I think the CGI is just right where you can see every moving part and you can see how it all works. And, you know, he'd be half car, half robot part of the time. He'd, you know, have all these cool gadgets out, but then you know where they are when they really take a close look at what his structure is. It's really well crafted CGI. And you said this is directed by Travis Knight, and he's actually directed a lot of stop motion animated films in the past. So I think that kind of background in detail and being very oriented as to character movements on non-human characters really helped him in this area. I think in the effects department that really helped him out, that past experience really helped him out when designing all the Transformers and how they move, operate, and so forth.
Wow, that's a really great point. This is his very first live action film, but you're so right that experience allowed him to slow things down. And I loved that you could actually see him transform, and the other Transformers that show up as well, where you're like, cool. Whereas in former movies, it's all, you know, and you're like, wait, what? I didn't get to see how exactly all that worked, you know?
Yeah, and especially with the fight sequences in the past, the robots all looked similar, and so you had a hard time picking out who's who.
Right.
These designs, foremost, are kept simple. There are not a lot of players involved, so there are limited characters to remember in the first place, but then the colors, the designs, the vehicles, and it helps you follow the action more than what you saw in the previous films.
Exactly. What did you think of the characters MIMO and the John Cena's character?
Well, John Cena, I haven't seen him in a lot of films, particularly. I know he used to be a wrestler, or still is, I think, but I've really seen him in a lot of movie previews lately. He's really expanding his career, and I think in this film, at least, he's doing a pretty good job. With human villains in these films, it's always kind of like and it's not, his character isn't especially great. It's not like he's the star of the show or he has a lot of focus given to him, but you clearly understand where he's coming from, and his motivations are clear. He's also very witty, unexpectedly, I think, because he had
Yes.
a lot of funny lines where
Yeah, he plays this, serious military man, and I think where he really shines is during the comedic moments. I think he's hilarious, and he's been in other comedies like Daddy's Home 1 and 2. He shows up, and he only had a few lines, but they were hilarious. And I agree. I love that he's getting into movies. He's such this huge guy that he's the perfect military man. I loved him in that. And what about MIMO as a teenage guy? Did you feel like you related more to him or to Charlie?
I not particularly. I think Mimo is one of the characters where I didn't quite get because first off, they don't introduce him until like halfway into the movie where he finally, wants to ask Charlie out. Before then, it's just like him trying to talk to her, and we never see him until he tries to make another attempt. And I think while the sequences that they have bonding the two characters, Charlie and Mimo, I think it doesn't work to think where I believe this kind of romance. It's an awkward romance, and I kind of like those, but this kind of it doesn't not work, but it just didn't work to where I think the movie could have used it effectively as part of the story. I think it's just one of the things that's on the side where, yeah, it's great to have, but is it necessary? Not really. I did like the sequence where the three of them, Charlie, Mimo, and Bumblebee, are toilet papering and egging the house. I think that's the part where all three of them, they're working together. They're together, and I think that's one of my favorite sequences because when you think Transformers, you wouldn't think, oh yeah, let's have a sequence where they're egging and toilet papering a house. So
Yeah,
I think
just to kind of point out that they're teenagers. Well, I mean that the two were teenagers, but that Bumblebee kind of had an innocence about him as well. He was learning what it was like to be on planet Earth and had kind of a childlike personality.
yeah, discovering new things, his curiosity is certainly adorable. I mean,
Yeah.
he's a stranger, but as he's learning these things and he's making these mistakes, you don't get mad at him. You just kind of laugh with him as he's trying to discover all these foreign things to him.
Exactly, yeah. So in terms of being family friendly, what advice would you have for parents since this is Movie Review Mom?
This is certainly one that you can watch with your kids. I mean, I was 5 when I saw the first Transformers, and this is significantly less violent than the other ones have been. There's no blood. In fact, they kill humans. They turn into this like
Slime
thing, which I didn't totally get, but they want to make this more child friendly. So I guess
I thought it was so gross when the first time the Decepticon, zaps this one guy and he explodes into this puddle of slime, and the other Decepticon says, I really like it when they pop. I'm like, that's disgusting.
Yeah, it's disgusting, but it's kind of
not bloody. It's not gory in that sense.
Yeah, and it didn't need to be, which is the great thing about it. I do think that I don't recall any much profanity in it.
There was some, Uncle Hank had a filthy mouth, and I was really hoping Charlie wouldn't. He says something to you or to her. He's like, "Are you still working on that bleepity bleep car?" And I was like, "Oh no, I hope she doesn't bleepity bleep back to him." And she's like, "Are you still working on that personality?" I was like, "Oh, good." But then later on, she does swear once. But otherwise, it's pretty toned down.
Yeah, it's not like the previous films where I think there's been at least one F word in them.
Right. There's no F-bombs. That's true.
Nothing too pervasive in that matter, or I guess serious is the right tone to adult. Also with the innuendos, sexual innuendos, there's none of that either, and you can tell in the past films they've had a lot of that if you've seen any of them.
Definitely.
There's not a lot of that there, unless you count like the teenagers, the school that Charlie, I guess, is around at points. There's a bit of that, but it's not like the earlier Michael Bay films where it's like, oh my goodness, just cut to something that I can watch.
There's a scene where some teenagers are standing around and they're holding cups, presumably with alcohol in them, when they're out there, and the one guy's going to dive off the cliff. The mom drinks some alcohol, but it's, not a ton of that. And Charlie remains pretty pure, I would say. And in fact, at the very end, I thought it was really sweet where MIMO tries to hold her hand. I don't know if this is a spoiler alert, but he tries to hold her hand and she's like, yeah, no, I'm not there yet. And I was like, wow, when do you ever see that in a movie? And I thought, good for her. And it's interesting. I don't know how much of this has to do with the fact that the writer of the movie is actually a woman. They brought in somebody to do some rewrites who also happened to be a woman. And so I don't know if that feminine touch made some of these choices, but I liked them. Yeah,
I also think it's change in director that he doesn't have much experience with live action films, that he's not going to be too adult for his first thing, especially since his past career has been mostly kids films, right? Certainly the animated films that he's done in the past, like Kubo and the Two Strings, I think.
Yeah, wow, that was so different than this one, right?
Yeah, where kids can watch it, but there's an adult edge to it that adults can watch. It's a similar thing here where kids can watch it and adults can watch it with them, but it's not like there's nothing they need to be particularly warned at with. There's a few things, but it's not like other films that have come out recently that share the PG-13 rating which I'm surprised this is PG-13, because I was watching this movie and I was like, is done with the amount of corners that they're kind of softening, the edges that they're softening. It doesn't feel like a PG-13 movie. There's violence, but like no people die on screen, and when people do die on screen, it's very kidified. Like, I don't know. It seems like a soft PG-13. It's not like a hard thing that it won't be able to.
Yeah, and there is plenty to talk to your kids about in this movie. Lots of topics. What would you say are the main themes in the movie?
Definitely friendship being one of them. The friendship between Bumblebee and Charlie is, they communicate with one another. They understand. It's also a story about letting go of tragedy, moving on, trying to deal with that. So I think parents will enjoy that part of it too. I'm not a parent, but I think that's something that I liked very much.
And, we see a lot of movies where one of the parents gets killed off, but what was a little bit unique about this is now we've got a step parent coming in, and I thought it was interesting to watch the evolution of that relationship as well, to add another dimension. Certainly loneliness and even fear and courage, as Charlie, where she was afraid to jump off that cliff, even though she was a diver. But then, finally she develops courage to overcome some fears. That's certainly a good conversation. And then there are these just stupid, mean girls that are just mean and snotty to Charlie. I've never understood why people are that way, but kind of a female bully, right, that parents can talk to their kids about as well. And then I loved the element of music as Bumblebee, they finally get the cassette tape working, right? And she's able to give him a voice, and she says, music can help you say what you're feeling. And then, of course, we all know Bumblebee communicates through the radio and the music. But I really liked that. And in fact, at the very, very beginning, she's in bed, her alarm goes off, and she slams it shut. And then she puts on a Walkman to kind of wake up, and she's listening to music. And what's cute is that the movie takes place in the 1980s, which is when I grew up. And so she, of course, is much younger than I am, and she had to learn how to use a Walkman. There's all kinds of fun 80s references. People are watching the TV show Alf, which I remember watching. And then there's all kinds of 80s devices, like the Walkman, for example. I'm trying to think, VHS videos. They talk about Miami Vice, just some things that, I saw growing up in the 80s that parents can get a kick out of and talk to their kids about.
Yeah, I really like the implement of the time period. It didn't feel forced or unnecessary, but like a natural use of such great ways to incorporate the music of the time, which I think the reason that this was set in the 80s was to use that music because it was popular then. You got music like Everybody Wants to Rule the World or Never Gonna Give You Up, give you up, things that were popular at the time, were released at the time and being heard by everyone, being loved by everyone. And I think the time period was selected so that Bumblebee could use those songs to communicate his words and feelings and all that.
Yeah, and another song and movie that was used several times was The Breakfast Club. Both the song, and the movie.
Yeah, so that's what that was. Because they show Bumblebee watching that, and I was like, "What movie is that?" Because I didn't know what that was, and then I was gonna go look it up, but then I forgot to later. But
have you ever seen The Breakfast Club?
No.
Oh, so you got to see it. Classic 80s movie, and in fact, it's also used in Pitch Perfect, the first movie, with that whole, it's that ending scene with what the guy is saying, the narration, as well as the song, and then that motion, which is so cute. Put that on your list of movies to see.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, there's so much more we could talk about this movie, but we need to leave time for our viewers to go see the movie. So, Dallas, I'm wondering if you have anything you want to say to my viewers.
Yeah, I'm down. I run a blog, Dallin, Film Fanatic. I write about movies. I write about all sorts of kinds of movies, and make it always family friendly. It's not anything too adult or anything like that. Everybody can read it. I write reviews. In fact, I'm working on my full review for Bumblebee, and that'll be done soon, so you can check that out. I'm also going to be seeing Aquaman later on, so I'll be working on a review for that later on. You'll see that soon. But yeah, you can follow me on Instagram. It's at Down the Film Fanatic. Facebook, Down the Film Fanatic, and Twitter, D the Film Fanatic. You can probably find the links in the description or something to all that. So
yeah, all of the links for all of his stuff is down below. So be sure and subscribe to both of us as we talk about movies, because we both love movies so much. Hit the blogs, like this video, subscribe to the channel, all that kind of stuff. And thanks for spending time with us today. We hope that you enjoy Bumblebee as much as we did. See you at the movies. Bye for now.